All right, guys, Tiz back. So listen, last time we talked about the West. Now we got to talk about the East. Obviously the Western Conference is better right now, but the East is still interesting, right? Like I feel like this past year the East was in a lot of ways more interesting than the West Coast. Even though I think top to bottom the West was better, the East was a little bit more intriguing. It was a little more fun. You had teams that hadn't been good lately, and they were putting it all together. And I feel like the East this year, it's a lot of the same. It's a lot of really, really, really good teams up at the top. Not so great teams down at the bottom, but it's definitely deeper than it has been in previous years. And I think it's going to be fun. So let's just start at the top. Everyone is talking about Philly. Like they're going to have a cakewalk into the finals. No, that's just not going to happen. They can make it, but it's not going to be easy. Philly obviously, they made their choices. They let Jimmy walk, and they signed Al Horford instead on a 4-year deal, which is I'm about as big on Al Horford as anyone you'll ever meet, but 4 years for Al Horford in 2019, like that's kind of crazy to me. But obviously, it's a play for right now. They gave him the money so that they could win right now, and that's fine. We'll see how it works. You know, we're getting into year 3 of Ben Simmons. I don't think people understand that this is year 3 of Ben Simmons. It's not. I mean, obviously it's his 4th year in the league, but it's 3rd year of actual play. Obviously there are holes in his game. Well, there's one huge hole in his game, but he has progressed so much in his time in the NBA. I don't understand why people sleep on him. He's going to get some semblance of a shot. It has to happen. And even if he doesn't, he's still a great player, and people are crazy to sleep on him, like him being like a 6'9", 6'10" power guard isn't hugely valuable, right? Like it's Ben Simmons is going to have another great year. Embiid, obviously, health is always a concern with him. If he can stay on the court, he's one of the top 5 players in the league, as far as I'm concerned. Defensively, he's a presence DPOY candidate. Offensively, he's ridiculous. His on-off numbers on the playoffs were insane. He was like plus 97 or something like that for the Toronto series, which means they lost that series because his teammates were horrible in the few minutes that he sat. You know, Philly is going to be really, really good. They lost J.J. Redick, which I think is a big deal. But they got Josh Richardson, which means that their starting 5 is just going to be huge. Defensively, it's going to be impossible to score on them. What I don't like so much, I don't like the Al Horford, Joel Embiid pairing. Like I don't like that for 2019. Offensively, I think it's a little bit clunky, especially with Ben Simmons running around. Obviously, Embiid and Horford can play up top, but I think you're misusing Embiid the more you have him at the 3-point line. It's a tool. It's a tool to use to keep the defense honest, but he's best on the block. And with Embiid on the block, that means Horford's going to be one of your spacers. Simmons isn't a spacer. I don't love the fit. I do like that having Al Horford there makes it so that Embiid you can do more effective load management. And for the few teams where you want to run 2 bigs, I mean, great, I guess. I mean, they're probably going to be better than any other 2 big set you're going to see. But I'm just not so sure running 2 bigs is what you need to be doing in 2019-20. But we'll see. They're going to have multiple ways to beat you, which is a good thing. I think they're going to need to shore up the bench. But I kind of feel like that's a league-wide thing now with the league now moving away from the super team and more towards like 90s style, like a 1-2 punch, 2 all-stars. A lot of the higher level role players are getting more play as starting lineup members for these, for the way more teams that are good now. So being able to flesh out a bench, I think, is a lot harder than it has been in previous years, where there's been so many teams not even trying. So you can get quality players off the scrap heap, not even pay them that much, and they can be contributors. I think now that's not really the case. Like Danny Green just got $15 million a year. That's no hate on Danny Green. I like Danny Green, but that's the quality player you used to be able to get for not all that much, and I feel like now it's going to be harder. So. Philly has the same problem that a lot of teams have, which is that the bench, I'm not in love with. But at the top, you got to like their talent. And I think most people think that they're the favorites to win the East. I'm not sure that's the case, but I'm not sure it's not the case either. So that's my take on Philly. All right, next up, I think people want to talk about Milwaukee. Milwaukee obviously led the league in winning percentage last year. Giannis won MVP. I think Milwaukee is still going to be really good, but I think losing Brogdon was huge. I think losing Mirotic to the Mediterranean lifestyle. I think that was huge. I think that they do not have as much firepower as they did before. I think people are really going to see how much Brogdon, how important he was to that team, specifically in the ways that Eric Bledsoe can't be. For Giannis to really work, he needs shooters everywhere. And Bledsoe just even being that one spot where you're not getting that shooting from, to me in the playoffs, that proved to be killer. And he's not going to become a knockdown three-point shooter, at this point in his career. I just don't see that happening. And, having Brogdon out there, it just served as an escape valve that they're not going to have anymore. And now they paid Middleton, so now their flexibility is down. I'm not in love with the team. I mean, that being said, I don't think they're going to just slip anywhere too far. But I don't think they're the number one team again. I thought they were going to win the chip this year. That didn't work out because Kawhi went beast mode, and Siakam and all that. I mean, what happened. But this next year coming up, I think they're really going to miss that shooting from Brogdon. They got Robin Lopez, cool. They got Brook back. That's a big deal. But that's what they already had, right? I just don't think they added pieces that are really going to make them better. And I think they lost, a huge piece that that is going to keep them from reaching that next level, which is tough because Giannis is up. They're really on the clock to really try to get Giannis exactly what he needs in a really short period of time. Because if he reached a level of expectations this year and we start to see that slide back, we might see them sliding out of Milwaukee in a couple of years, but we'll have to see on that. But for right now, I still think they're a strong team, but I don't think that they're going to be winning the East this year. I don't think they're going to come out and make the finals, at least not as presently constructed. Obviously, things change, and we can see what happens, in the long run, but I don't see it happening for right now. So if we're going to talk about Milwaukee and what they lost, then we got to talk about who I don't see anyone talking about, but I don't understand why. The Indiana Pacers. They're going to be crazy. Like, they already finished fifth last year, off of half a season of Oladipo. And now they're going to get Oladipo back. They got Brogdon now. They're going to be ridiculous. This, Miles Turner continuing to grow. They lost Bogdanovich, which I think is a big deal, but they still have Sabonis. They still have more than enough to be able to compete night in and night out. And now they have, their main creator back as well. And again, Brogdon, he's an elite shooter, a really good ball handling presence, a really good defender. I think they're going to be great. Collison left to hand out Watchtower flyers. Cool. I think getting Brogdon more than makes up for the loss of Darren Collison. That's my take on it. I think we're going to see the Pacers playing really strong this year. I would not be surprised in the least bit if the Pacers made the finals this year. Obviously, there's a lot of basketball to play. I mean, there's the whole 82 games. But I really feel like the Pacers set themselves up for massive success this year. And obviously, you can tell I'm huge on Brogdon. I think he's the exact kind of player that the Pacers need to play alongside Oladipo because he doesn't need the ball, but he can work with the ball. And he's going to play strong defense. Oladipo back. I think they're going to be coming for the East neck. That's what I think. I think if you're an Eastern Conference team, these guys are coming for your neck. So, be ready for that. I'm not going to make any claims right now because, again, there's still a lot to take place over the summer. We still got a couple things left out there. But if you're asking me today, right now, I say Pacers are the number one seed out the East. That's how I feel. Not Philly, not Milwaukee. I like Indiana. That's just me. Now, at the same time, I felt the same way about this next team from last year, and it didn't really work out. But I'm still throwing it out there for 2019, 2020. I think the Boston Celtics are going to be way better than people think. I think losing Horford was a huge deal. I think Horford's one of the most, undervalued players in the league. They're going to have a hard time making up for his production. And, we're still got to see what's going to happen with Marcus Morris. But I think Gordon Hayward, 2 years off the injury, is going to be a problem. I think Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, without having to wrestle with Kyrie for control of the team and control of the ball, I don't think last year was a representation of who they are as players and who they're going to be. I think how we felt about them at the end of 2018 is how we're going to start to feel about them again at the start of 2019-20. And by the time the All-Star game comes around, by the time the playoffs come around, we're going to see the not fully, but the much improved, further evolved forms of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And I think that's going to be huge for the team. Obviously, they added Kemba also. I think Kemba's more the wild card. Kemba, we've yet to see him play in the NBA alongside good players. And I'm not one of these guys that thinks that playing alongside good players is good. Or is easy, rather. I think we see it every year, and everyone just seems to forget every year that it's not, you can't just put players together that are, quote unquote good and think they're supposed to mesh. Every year we see that that's not quite how it works, and play styles matter, and players being able to show productivity in a way that's actually helpful for the team, as opposed to productivity that in ways detracts from the team but just looks good personally. I did a whole video on that. You can go look at it. I think the jury's still out on Kemba when it comes to that, and that's through no fault of his own. He's just never played with other good players, really, and so we don't know what he's able to do. I think that if he's able to shift his game to be more into the team dynamic that obviously did well for the guys, back in 2018 playoffs. If he's able to play in that style and still make his mark, when he's needed, I think that is the pinnacle of what Boston can be. That's what I felt about Kyrie last year. I felt like Kyrie had the choice of stepping into the team and working within the team structure, or standing outside of that and trying to do his Kyrie Irving ISO stuff, stand around, less passes, all that stuff. And he chose the latter. He chose to try to, take control of the team at whatever cost. And I feel like that played itself out in the on-court product and obviously in the locker room also. I feel like Kemba has that same choice to make. Hopefully he can learn from what Kyrie didn't do, and he can make his own choices and be better than that. If he does that, and if Hayward looks like 80% of what he was in Utah, which again, 2 years off the injury, that's way more likely, I don't see how Boston can't make the finals. And I think it's hilarious that people were writing these guys off because Kyrie was leaving. I felt like if Kyrie left and they didn't pick up Kemba and they just rolled Rozier back out there, I thought they'd be better this year than they were last year. Not that Rozier's better than Kyrie, but I do think that Kyrie's style was not good at all for a young, growing team. And I'm not sure Kyrie's style is good for the NBA period anymore, when he's not playing, alongside the greatest player in the world. But that remains to be seen. But I do think that Boston, having given agency back to their young guys, they're going to see a lot of return on that. And I think that if Hayward can be back to his old self, or some reasonable semblance of that, Boston Eastern Conference Finals, Boston NBA Finals, that all seems perfectly normal to me for that to happen. Again, I still like Indiana, but I think Boston's going to be right up there with anyone else. To me, that's the top four right there. Indiana, Boston, Milwaukee, and Philly. Those are your top four teams out of the East. I feel like there's a fall off after that. Obviously, Toronto is still around. They just lost Kawhi, but Siakam's coming on. OG Anunoby is going to have an increased role, ability to show himself. Kyle Lowry's still there. I know a lot of you guys don't like Kyle Lowry. I still think he's an all-star. I don't think he is an all-star point guard. And he played well in the NBA Finals. He's a prideful guy. He's going to be able to have this team working in the regular season. They're not making the conference finals. They're not making the NBA Finals again. Unless Masai pulls something crazy off, that's not happening. So that's really all that needs to be said about Toronto. Obviously, the big talk of the Eastern Conference right now is Brooklyn. Um, you know, I think Brooklyn has an outside shot at being a really, really, really good team. But I think they have too much going against them. Well, maybe not too much, but they have more things going against them than going for them. So I'd have to wager that they're not going to reach, the pinnacle of their potential. But I think they're a team with amazing potential, right? So obviously they got rid of D'Angelo to make room for Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Durant's not going to play this year coming up. Well, I mean, that may not be true. He might come on by playoffs. I mean, who knows? It's obviously way too early in the whole recovery period to make any statements about that, though we are going to talk about that in a second. But for all intents and purposes, let's just say it's Kyrie, it's Karis LeVert, it's Joe Harris. They picked up Wilson Chandler, Jared Allen at the center. DeAndre Jordan also obviously came along too. That's a good team, right? Spencer Dinwiddie off the bench. I mean, that's a good team. I feel like as good as this team can be, it's dependent on the same thing with Boston last year. Is dependent on if Kyrie thinks that he needs to dribble the ball all day and stand around when he doesn't have the ball and play garbage defense. If he feels like that's how he wants to keep playing, then, there's a limit to how good they can be. If Kyrie wants to be an actually empowering point guard and an empowering teammate and someone who, likes to move the ball organically, I think that's going to, pay off in dividends for Karis LeVert. Karis LeVert obviously showed himself to be on an all-star track early last year before he got hurt. And then when he came back, he showed flashes late in the season and into the playoffs of being able to be that kind of player. But he needs the system to nurture that. And Brooklyn's system has been nurturing of growth these past couple of years. And obviously they traded in the chips to get Kyrie and to get KD. But with KD basically taking a redshirt year, I feel like Brooklyn should still use this year to develop the guys. And Kyrie is not a player that throughout his career so far has shown his style to be one that's good at, helping other players become their best selves. And I think that Brooklyn's season depends on how good Karis LeVert can be. And Brooklyn's season depends on how good Jared Allen gets to be. And I don't like that DeAndre Jordan is there now. He's friends with the guys and, whatever, and that's supposed to be a big three, but not. I think Jared Allen at this point is a better basketball player than DeAndre Jordan. Jared Allen is on the way up. DeAndre's on the way down. I think he needs time. He needs minutes. And I think Karis LeVert needs time, minutes, but more importantly, he needs agency and opportunity. He needs to be able to have the ball. He needs to be able to do things with the ball without getting scowled at, without being pulled, without any of that. He needs freedom. And I think that if they give these players that freedom, they'll return that in spades with productivity. But if they don't give them that freedom, then, that could be problematic. Kyrie's going to be Kyrie. Kyrie's going to be able to score on anyone at will in crunch time when it's needed, but I think he needs to learn how to take a step back, especially during the regular season, while the team is trying to learn and trying to grow, and let that take place. And then when the playoffs come, you have stronger players around you so that they can accentuate everything. And then when it comes down to crunch time, game 7, 2 minutes left, 4-point game, and it's time for Kyrie to be Kyrie, then do that, right? If that's the approach to the Brooklyn Nets season, I think they can be right at the top too. If that's not the approach to the season, then it's going to be a lost season, which isn't the end of the world either because you got KD coming right after that. So let's talk about KD. Obviously everyone points to the Achilles injury. No one has ever come back from an Achilles rupture and been the same kind of player. People point to Dominique Wilkins, but no, he wasn't the same. He was still productive, but he wasn't the same. I think Kevin Durant may be the first person ever to be able to do it. And there's a couple reasons why. I don't know if people saw the Gilbert Arenas podcast. He was talking about, he popped the Achilles on the right foot, but he's a left foot jumper. And, maybe that's the thing. I don't know. What I do know is that Kevin Durant's game has never been about explosiveness. It's never been about explosiveness. It's been about the fact that he's 7 feet tall, with like ridiculous wingspan, and he has an automatic shot, and none of those things are going away. He has just enough of a handle to break down anyone who's remotely tall enough to guard him. That's not going away. I think where Kevin Durant is going to see a change to his game is defensively. He's not going to be quite as nimble. And I think that hurts because I feel like in the last couple of years, Kevin Durant has shown himself to be an all NBA defensive level player when he wants to be. And I think that might go away. And I think that's going to hurt. But offensively, well, I mean, Kevin Durant didn't even play defense for the first 7 years of his career, and he won an MVP doing that. So, even without being a top flight defender like he has been for the past couple of years, he's still going to be a really, 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 really good player. Unless there's something I don't know about the Achilles tear that makes you 6 inches shorter or something like that. He's going to still be really good. At worst, he comes back as being like 2010, 2011, 2012 version of Dirk Nowitzki. At worst. And I think he's going to come back being a lot better than that. I think people are going to see that. Whether that means he comes back doing that this year, I don't know about that. But for next season, which I don't want to talk about next season yet, but whatever. For next season, we're still going to see a super high level of Kevin Durant play. And like I said, hopefully to go along with that, for Brooklyn, there'll be an all-star version of Karis LeVert, an all-NBA defense level player in Jarrett Allen, and, a smarter, more controlled Kyrie Irving. Or maybe not. All right, last team I want to talk about now is the Miami Heat. They're not super interesting, honestly. They got Jimmy Buckets. They gave up Josh Richardson for that. They lost Hassan Whiteside. They picked up some guys from the Blazers. I mean, they still have their young guys, Tyler Johnson, Bam. They have decent enough pieces. They remind me of like the early 2000s Miami Heat teams where it was like, they're good. They're not going to win shit, but like they're good. It's the same thing now with Miami. I think they're a good enough team to, make a 5 or 6 seed in the East, maybe even steal a first round series, but that's as far as it goes, if it even goes that far. I don't know. There's not a lot to say. I like Jimmy Buckets in Miami. I think that's a perfect fit as far as like style and culture. And maybe they have a trade in them. Maybe they go get Russ, which I don't know if that makes them better, but I don't know. I don't think they're all that interesting, but they're more interesting than anyone else in the East. So that's that. The rest of the teams in the East, as far as I'm concerned, they're not really worth talking about. Again, unless Orlando makes a move for Russ or something like that. Detroit, they got D Rose. Shout out D Rose, always and forever. But it's not a game changer. Blake, I know he's up for free agency next year, so maybe he can be involved in a trade around the deadline. But outside of that, I just I don't see anything too exciting coming out of Detroit. And the rest of the teams in the East are just honestly not even worth talking about. I'm not going to spend any time whatsoever talking about the Wizards outside of maybe trading Beal. I'm not going to talk about the Knicks. Just not. The Bulls, again, I'm just not putting any time into that. So that's it as far as I'm concerned. Back to the last video, I saw 7 real contenders for a title coming out of the West. With the next 3 teams are still being really good and maybe even having a puncher's chance at that too. But 7, I think the top 7 Western Conference teams are actual championship contenders. Like they're real, actual contenders. I think for the East, you can say the same thing about the top 4 teams. And once you get below that, again, I think Brooklyn has an outside chance. If everything goes well, they could be a contender too. I don't really see that one happening. But, they're the next best. And I feel like, for the first time in a really long time, you can honestly say that the majority of teams in the league are good. The majority of teams in the league are very good. Again, with about a dozen of them being actual championship caliber teams. And I can't think of another time that was true in NBA history. I can't think of a better time to be a basketball fan, and I'm excited for this season coming up. Again, we got Russ out there on the block. We got Kevin Love on the block. Bradley Beal. They say he's not on the block, but they also don't have a GM, so who the hell knows? There's still some moves to be made. We'll see what happens. Obviously, there's a little bit of a cloud of injury over this season coming up. We got Clay coming back. KD might be coming back. Like I said, Gordon Hayward might be coming back into form. Kristaps might be coming back into form. We have a lot to look forward to this year. You can hold me. Actually, you can't hold me to shit. I'm gonna make closer to the season actually starting. I'm gonna make a whole nother video about my actual predictions for the year. This is just my predictions as of July 6th, 2019, the day that Kawhi Leonard signed. These are my predictions. Who knows? While I've been making this video, something else might have happened. Or maybe someone signed Melo. All right, I'm out.